Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Vem Miller for Veterans in Politics. Today, our guest is going to be Dr. Jon Petrick. He's a Nevada Assembly candidate running for District Number 2-1. But before we get to Dr. Petrick, Vem,
not much to say. I'm interested in interviewing you. I've seen you quite a bit out there. I know you do a lot of important work. And you're an impeccable dresser every single time.
He's a talker.
Yeah. Very good taste in clothes, I got to tell you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, do you want to take off, Steve, or
Dr. Petrick?
Yes.
Give us a bio.
History, right? History. I was born in Pitsburg, Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh, in a small town called Swickley.
Know where Hershey Park is?
I know it very well. It's a theme park for those of you who don't know where it is.
I used to love Hershey Park. Yeah. I found out I can't eat chocolate anymore.
Oh, right. Anyhow, actually, believe it or not, if you a little history on that, Hershey was pretty instrumental. It's one of the very first theme parks in the country was at Hershey Park. Yeah, there was a lot of history.
What was it, Winnie Wonka?
Yeah, Willy Wonka. Yeah.
Willy Wonka. There you go.
But I was born in Swickley, Pennsylvania. We lived semi out into the country, if you will.
Okay.
I came from an inner city family, but my mom and my dad moved out into the country.
Hold on a second. The Amish. Is there a lot of Amish out there?
Yeah. There is.
Okay.
I mean, Lancaster, Pennsylvania is one of the capitals of the Amish. And if you ever want to talk, an interesting fact about the Amish too, they average 16,000 steps a day. Average, like the minimum. Like, I mean, like they have some that actually walk 26,000 steps. So if anybody's got a monitor out there,
we'd be good at passing out flyers for political candidacy, right?
Is this whole interview
with their horse and buggy? You're under a horse and buggy. The horse comes up, kids jump out.
I actually saw this funny. I saw the Slim Jim commercial, and it was an Amish guy, and he picked up two guys. Their car had broken down. The one guy's sitting in the front, and the guy's sitting in the back. And the guy he's in the buggy, and the guy's like, "So how do you feel not without the internet?" And he's like, "Don't matter." And he's like, "Doesn't matter. You don't have the internet." He's like, "I get pictures of your mom through the mail." Right? So that was funny. So,
all right, please continue with your bio.
So then my parents worked for the airlines, and my dad got transferred to Columbus, Ohio. So that's where I became a Buckeye. So I'm going to get a little shout out to my Buckeyes. But I was born in Pittsburgh, so I was a Steeler fan, then a Buckeye. I lived in Ohio. I wrestled, played football, just about every sport. Back in the day, that's what we did. We played sports all year round. It didn't matter. That kept us out of my mom's hair. And then I
play with the Amish kids.
Yeah, right. Throw some hay. Then I went out to Colorado. I was going to play tailback in Grand Junction, Colorado. It was about that time I realized I started to acknowledge the fact that I was studying a lot, and I ended up really trying to put in a lot of effort, and I wasn't getting it. So I would be studying with my friends, and I noticed that they seemed to be getting better grades, and I was struggling. And so I thought maybe school's not for me. So then it was when I got to college, a cute smile, and the fact that I was an athlete didn't matter. So therefore I couldn't fake my way through it anymore. So I kind of bailed on the college thing and went down to San Diego. My mom had gotten married. My parents had gotten divorced. And that was who the Colonel of the Marine Corps was. So he came into our lives when I was about 15 years old.
Boy, smacked you around, didn't he?
Actually, you know what? I do appreciate that, because you would think so, but he had as a colonel, and he flew the CH-46, the Sea Knight, two tours in Nam. He won. Ooh. He was shot down. So he was a real man's man in regards to the leadership. Mm-hmm. He had a way of chewing you out without you knowing you were chewed out. Like you'd leave there going, "Did I just get my ass chewed out?"
Kind of like the French.
It was like he just had that way of just being.
You know how the French, they curse you out and you think that they're complimenting you?
Yeah. He kind of had that when you'd leave there. So he came into our lives when I was about 15. My brother was 11. My stepfather was a great man. He taught us to be gentlemen. My real father was kind of a cowboy. He worked for the airlines and ran servicemen. And my stepfather entered our lives. He kind of allowed us to realize we had an importance.
You have a relationship of both?
Both, yeah. Okay. Actually, towards the latter part of my stepfather's life, him and my dad became very close friends. My mom and him were very amiable. One time someone said to me, you could always tell a lot by, your parents were not the greatest role model of a marriage. But I said, no, but they sure were as far as how to be divorced. Mm. They put aside their hatred and bitterness, and my brother and I were their mission. Right. And then when my stepfather came in, and Yeah, he just really allowed us an opportunity to kind of gravitate to a new level, like a belief system inside yourself. As an officer in the Marine Corps, you guys go through this where it's not like, hey, I'm going to crawl through that wall. You can. So we didn't have that part of it. So it was like that really was where the fundamental stop of what leadership was. A story, my stepbrother, my brother and I, we were on a beach in Florida. And we buy these rafts, and we're going to rent rafts all day long. And the sand in Florida is hot. I mean, like laser hot. And we're walking, little boys like, ah. And my stepdad realizes that the woman didn't charge us for 2 of the rafts, right? And we're like $2, $4. And he's like, come on, boys. And he marched us back that hot beach.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, burning our feet. He paid that woman, and she was so grateful for he did that, because apparently it would have come out of her money or something. She gave him these vouchers for the next day for free rafts. So we're walking, and he kind of had this little thing, and he just went, for us, he was like, see, boys, if you do the right thing, good things happen. And it was like, so fundamentally, he started off with that, teaching us to be accountable. Right. He would never it was very seldom that you didn't, with him, you never really you did anything wrong. You just let him down. And that was almost worse. Right. So, but my real father has horses in Ohio. So I grew up kind of around horses, so I can ride. My stepfather was more of the businessman. And at that time, getting back up to college, they bought an extermination company in San Diego, California. We were killing bugs. And I don't know anything about killing bugs. I mean, either you got to love it, which I didn't love, but we killed bugs for a couple years and then had some franchises. And then my dad, when you turn 60 commercial flying, you have to retire.
Automatic?
Yeah, you have to retire. That's an automatic medical. You have to retire at 60.
Age discrimination?
No, it actually has to do with certain fitness, at a certain point, they know as far as cardiovascular injuries.
Fall asleep at the wheel.
Thank God he got a co-pilot. But anyhow, and I think the age actually may have changed to 65 now. But at that time, it was 60. My dad had left flying, and then he was killing bugs with us down in San Diego for 2 years. Then he got an opportunity to work for Warren Buffett and fly the Citation 10. Oh, wow. So if you know anything about this, is like the fastest kind of a non-commercial plane you could get in.
Was
a little
he
jet.
Commercial?
He had flown for Eastern Airlines.
They make over 6 figures. 6 figures. How come he's doing bug killing?
At the time, Eastern Airlines, they went Chapter 11, then eventually Chapter 7. They broke up the airline. They kind of got truly the pilots got abandoned by ALPA, the pilots unions kind of abandoned the pilots. And then so you had a lot of like my father, one of the original members of Top Gun out of Pensacola, one of the best pilots in the sky. What does you do now? After 29 years with Eastern Airlines, maybe it's time to reinvent yourself. And he never once ever complained. He just knew that he had a battle ahead of him. He went a substitute teacher. He was an insurance guy for a while. And then when a buddy said, hey, come out and let's kill bugs, another colonel in the Marine Corps that he flew with, and you know how tight y'all are. So we went out he was in El Toro when there was an El Toro.
Right, I remember.
So that's where my dad retired from, was El Toro. And I think 92. It was right around the time.
El Toro was worth more being housing than a base.
Yeah, beautiful place though. I mean, the officers club was great, and I learned. What I learned down there?
What's that?
In the Marine Corps, they have this unique thing. I don't know if it's officers or whoever it is, but they eat glass.
Oh,
I'm not kidding. They actually chew glass. These pilots, it was a part of a group, and they're like, they bite, you drink your shot, and then they would bite their glass. It was like,
any good dentist will say you're dumb. Don't do that shit.
Marine Corps fun times. So he retired, and I went in San Diego. My dad, he retired from the Marine Corps. He went to fly again. We had an extermination business. He said, do you want to maintain it? And I said, no, I think I'm going to do something different. At that time, he had a friend of his, another Marine, that owned a town outside of Phoenix called Rock Springs.
He owned a town?
A whole town.
God, you got a mayor, city council?
Everything. It had a smaller than Mayberry even, but I mean, it was a small town. You'd blink if you went by. It's called Rock Springs. His name was Jack Exum, Fat Jack, they used to call him, an incredible helicopter pilot in Vietnam. But he owned this town. He was kind of one of those guys that just had that charisma that you were never going to get in a fight with him or you're going to get slaughtered. He was just one of those guys who'd he just had a way with them. But anyhow, he'd do a huge Harley party called Hogs in Heat, but he needed someone to help him with the town.
Hogs in Heat.
And what it was, they would literally, it was Hogs in Heat. It was a big, giant, like Harleys, like thousands of Harleys would go there. But he needed help with the town. So he said, send your son over to my dad. Let him come run my town. It'll be, well, I was 22 years old. Oh, I bet the population was less than 100.
Did you tell him that the only way you're going to come is if you were mayor?
No, Fat Jack was one of those guys you kind of did what you were voluntold things. So I went there and I tried that. And then while I was there, I decided I was going to be a stockbroker and I was going to go work for Bank of America. Okay. And at that time, I went to a Halloween party. I was 22 years old, almost 23. In November, I would have been 23. I went to a Halloween party. There were some people there at the event, and I said, I don't really know anybody here. I'm probably ready to go home. So this girl said, oh, you can ride with us, her and her boyfriend. I said, great. They had a little Suzuki Samurai little Jeep thing. Mm-hmm. I got in the back. We were driving down the road, and she had been drinking. We went down this kind of where the road just kind of end. She went down the wrong way, and there was a bulldozer had dropped some load of gravel, so kind of like a mound. Being night, she didn't really see the mound until the last minute. We hit it, and unfortunately, I did not have my seatbelt on, so that's probably 2 strikes against me. I hit the roll bar, hit the side of the Jeep, and then I was thrown from the Jeep. She was worried about getting a DUI, so they left. They left me there.
They left you?
Left me. Didn't know these people, but I mean, they did leave me. I crawled out of that stupid hole, and believe it or not, I almost got hit by another woman. It was because I was on the thing. She pulled over, and she said, "Oh my God, what the hell happened?" And I said, I don't know what day it was. I was concussed. Must have asked her 75 times, where am I going? Where do I live? She said, well, I got to take you to the hospital. So she took me to the emergency room and kind of wheeled me in and said, I don't know this person. I found him on the road. I had cuts and abrasions, and I ended up with neurological damage on the right side of my body. I couldn't even hold a chicken wing or a glass of water. My hand would shake, and I had foot drop. And I had been to many different doctors, and I was an athlete, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Massive headaches. And it was to the point I couldn't concentrate. I was nervous about driving because when I turned my head, I get dizzy. So it was like that was the thing. So I had already exhausted all the friendships I could. Can you give me a ride to work? That can only happen so long before people get a little bit annoyed. Yeah, it was a burden. And I had been to 7, 8, 9 different doctors, and there was all the same thing. Hopefully this will get better. We'll try some more pain meds. We'll try some more injections. And it was to the point to where it was like I was fed up. And I went, this is not how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. I need to do something. And just ironically, I worked a unique shift that I could get a ride to the bank doing calls. Like I could do a call center at the bank because that's about all I could do at the time. And the girl said, you need to go see the doctor that that I worked for before I started working here. And I said, I've been everywhere. And she said, no, seriously, he's fantastic. He's an incredible man. You got to meet him. He's the kind of person that if he can't help you, he won't even charge you. And I was like, really? I was like, well, all right. So I said, will you give me a ride? She said, absolutely. Let me set the appointment up. Her name was Serena. I don't know where she's at now. It was 30 some years ago. But she took me to this guy. I walked in. He looked like William Baldwin. He had 15 patients in his waiting room, and he was walking around, and they were hugging him. And I was like, oh my God, who is this guy?
The Messiah.
It was just odd, right? And I had never been to an office like that. And I had experienced chiropractic, but I hadn't. It was more like along something my mom.
He was a chiropractic doctor.
He was a chiropractic doctor. Mm-hmm. So I was like, he would adjust me, and he did this technique called active release techniques, which he told me all about, and it's a specialty service. And I thought everybody, every chiropractor, I guess, did that. And I found out, no, it was a very
I'm not
rare.
sold on chiropractic, just to let you know.
We'll chat about that. Mm-hmm. It's good. And I appreciate that, first and foremost, I do. He ended up helping me. He did the soft tissue work on me, freed up the nerves from my hand. Within probably about 6 weeks, I no longer had I didn't shake. My foot didn't flop. All the nerve damage that I was experiencing started to get better. And seeing him over the 9 months that I had seen him, he would see every one of these patients had that consistent benefit. I could see him and they were loving him, and I was loving him too, because I was better. It wasn't. I appreciate your. For me, it was because I know what I know. I know what I experienced and what I felt. There's bad in every profession, and we'll get into it. But after that, I went to him one time after we had become friends, and he started mentoring me, and I said, I want to do that. He was like, yeah, come to the house, and he's like, this is what you can do. And I said, I want to do that. And I went to Cleveland Chiropractic College in Kansas City. That's where I started. And I assumed like day one, where do I learn that soft tissue technique that he did? And they're like, oh, we don't teach that here. We're just going to teach you you need a 4-year undergrad. You need a 4-year medical program. So that's what it is. So it's an 8-year program. Depending upon the accelerated programs, you can do it in 7. Right. Where you just double up on your senior year. You double up on
7
your
years.
So it's 7 to 8 years as a program. And I did that in 1995. I enrolled. I started immediately, went into, okay, you don't teach it. Where can I get it? Mm-hmm. And I went to active release. It was taught by a gentleman by the name of Mike Leahy out of Colorado Springs, with the Olympic doctor. He's the doctor for the Broncos. He's been a doctor for various different, from the Prince of Qatar to, you name it. Dr. Leahy's probably treated him. Another one of my mentors. So Dr. Atkins, now Dr. Leahy. And really, Steve, that was... Having good mentors is critical for the success. If you have a good person that is going to pay the time and the attention to you to make sure that you can manifest the skill set that they see in you that maybe you don't see. Yeah. And I was blessed to have great mentors, and because I was dyslexic, that was part of the reason why I was struggling in school. And it wasn't, I always say it was a cute little girl with a ponytail that changed my life. Because it was
always those ones.
It was, and this is for real.
Pigtails.
And she had a ponytail. There was this girl. Her name was Nicole. I'll never forget it. I was living in this little apartment, and there was a couple mailboxes, and she was there. She's cute little thing. She had a jacket on, like a clinic jacket, and I'm just like a little like a freshman, right? And she's got this clinic jacket. I mean, she was almost through the program, so I was just like finding something to communicate with her. And I had gotten a letter from Arizona where I was, and she's like, "Oh, you're from Arizona?" And I said, "I am." She's, "Oh, you go to Cleveland?" I said, "I do." She's like, "Oh, I used to live in Arizona before I went to chiropractic school." I was like, "Oh, you did?" She said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Really?" She's, "Yeah, my ex-fiance is, man, he's one of the very, very best." And I was like, "Oh, man." I was like, "Man, that's why I'm here. My doctor was the best." And she's like, where was your guy at?" And I was like, "Oh, 7th Avenue in Phoenix." And she's like, "His name is James Atkins?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "That's my ex-fiance."
Oh, wow.
So it was like, wow, what a small world. So then we became friends, because they were friends, and then we became friends. And one day she invited me down, which was a very embarrassing day, actually. I came down, she had about 5, I said, "I'm new to Kansas City," and she said, "Come on down, I always do these study groups." And it was like something out of boom. I walked in, there were like 5 very beautiful doctors in this room, and I'm like, oh my God, stuttering Stanley. And I walk in, and I was kind of, talking to Nicole, and she was helping me on my basic stuff, or in the medical stuff, and I'm doing like the, chem, and they're doing anatomy and physiology. And she noticed right off, she said, "I think that you may have dyslexia." And at the time, I didn't really have an understanding of it. So she said, "I think I can help you. I helped my brother, and I've helped a few other people with this, and there are some ways." And so over the next 6 months, she helped me with that really, she kind of taught me that it's not really a disability, it's a superpower. I mean, I can remember phone numbers of my,
you got a long bio. I just have to tell you.
I'm sorry. That's it. Well, then I ended up here. I'll cut it short then. The truth is that after Kansas City, I ended up in Las Vegas 22 years ago. Okay. When I moved here, I started working with the Toronto Blue Jays. Mm-hmm. Which were the 51s, and I was a strength and conditioning chiropractic physician for them. And then in 2004, 2005, I started fixing UFC fighters, and then I was on the TV show for The Ultimate Fighter for the last 15 years. Oh. And I was on for 14 years. I took a 2-year hiatus to do some other things, and then this last season they brought me back on. Now I'm at the Apex Center, working with Pena and Nunez on their team. So so fast forwarding, Vegas has been the most incredible city for me. It's a big city, but it's a small pond. And if you work hard, and I worked like hell. And when I first moved here, broke as could be, I had $175,000 worth of medical school loans. Yeah. I had to borrow my dad's truck. I lived with my parents. My first treatment was a patient who came by the house that I had met through working with other pro teams, and said, "Hey, I'm in town. Can you treat me? How'd you get my number?" And I knew right off the bat that there was no way, that old saying, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I started serving. So I went out to the Special Olympics. I was a coach. I did the physicals for them for no charge. I started working for Opportunity Village. I was on their board. I went Leadership Las Vegas in 2004. So I just started serving every capacity you could imagine. I just started getting out. And guess what happened? What? Just like it said, as soon as I started serving, I started caring, they started asking me what I did, then it led to a practice, and then it was people coming in, then it was for the right reasons, and it was like, wow, this is great. So now role play, 22 years, or fast forward 22 years, I got my own nonprofit in 2008. I started KISMIF, which is Keep It Simple, Make It Fun, which is where we take people with disabilities, camping, canoeing, and things like that. We worked with the city program, some amazing individuals, Jonathan Foster, who used to work for the city. In 2015, we put on more basketball tournaments than anybody in the country for people and veterans in chairs. So once you kind of get into that vein, if you will, of serving, you just feel fantastic. And so for me, it was a great transition. That's kind of when I was serving 22 years as a physician, and then, for 12, 14 years with my nonprofits, you get to really know a community. And after Leadership Las Vegas taught me so much that you wouldn't even imagine that you could learn about a city. Some amazing stuff. So that's really pretty much my bio.
So what makes you get into politics? Why are you in politics?
As a physician, I've always been a patient advocate. Okay. And I think next to your spouse or your priest, your physician should be the person you share the most with. And during COVID, the government rushed in and they started telling us what we couldn't do for our patients. They kept telling me that I had to do this and I had to do that. And so they violated and denounced my education. They denounced my experience of 22 years with people dealing with patients. They denounced my connection and love and respect that I gained over these years with my patients. And it didn't add up. I had friends of mine who work for the Army as physicians, work with me. And they're like, I know how many letters I've gotten from the federal government telling me what I can and can't prescribe. 0 besides this one. And right about that time, the BLM started. And I was like, man, that's okay.
Bureau
whatever.
Of Land Management?
No, it was the Black Lives Matter. And I know you knew that, Steve. And the point that I'm making was that I looked at it and said, wait a second. I don't care about that, but what I care about is the narrative about the police. A lot of these people I serve, 300 and some police officers, as patients, and I understand there's bad in everything. And I have some things about that I believe are part of the problem with police and how they work with the community. They take an oath to the Constitution, but they learn case law. Let's get back to where they take an oath to, but. The point is that I said, let's do something to show them we all don't hate them. So my brother and I said, let's do a party. We'll just do a steak dinner. We'll do a steak dinner. We'll get some people.
I wasn't invited. Were you invited?
I don't think I was.
You'll definitely be invited this year. But so that was the first year, July 19th, 2020. We had about 500 people.
500 people, and we didn't get an invite.
And it gets worse, Steve. It gets worse. It was a success, and they loved it, and we did well. And then we said in 2021, we want to do it again. We want to show them we still love them. We still want to be a part of it. But let's do it on September 11th. Okay. We did, and we had Forrest Griffin came and announced me. We had 2,300 people, 12 food trucks. We had 5 big bands. We had, comedians from LA came up. Like the Kenan.
Not that comedian we had at the ball.
No. Keenan Peele, I think, there's kind of that comedy of Keenan Peele, those guys. Yeah. But they came up. We had some amazing singers, and there were some people that were running for office. I'm open to anybody. We have to, at some point, as a physician, when you take that oath, you take an oath that you don't care what someone looks like. You got to meet them where they are. Black, white, gay, straight, political, Democrat, Republican. You don't even ask those questions. Like I always tell people, athletes don't see color, neither do doctors, because you got to love that person and you take an oath to it. And if it means something to you, and if you come from someone like me that earned it, nothing that I had came easy. Like I struggled in school terribly. So everything that I gained was gained based upon unfortunate, tough.
You're running as a Republican for Nevada Assembly. Why did you pick that party?
I most associate with that my core values, how I feel as coming from a son of a military man, and what that meant, and to be a patriot, to be loyal, to be honest, and seeing what's happening in the Constitution. But during COVID, as we were having these parties, I was studying, Steve. I took over 360 hours of constitutional training. I hired a tutor. My cousin, Albert Pisano, ran for governor of North Carolina. I spent, hundreds of hours with him on the phone learning the Constitution. Got me motivated because I can make a change. I can do it. It would be, I love politics. What I love is the fact that, anybody can do it. What I probably despise the most is that anybody can do it without having to get past some hurdles. How about read the Constitution? For be a pilot, you got to take a test. To be a police officer, you got to take a test. A doctor, accountant. But you can be a politician. No one's going to quiz you or find out whether you've actually read the document you're going to uphold. So for me, it was like, I better read this. I better know this. And this better be something that means something to me just beyond the fact that I say, I'm a constitutionalist. So I read it. We studied it. I went through Hillsdale College, their program that they have an online program. North Carolina had a program. So being dyslexic, at 48, 49 years old, I fell in love with American literature. Okay. I never read it before. It was like this, and the words matter. I'll give you a prime example. If there are three of us here right now, if I said happiness.
A talker.
Happiness. What's happiness? What's happiness?
I guess, my definition would be, I think that's very internal. It's something that it's very personal, like your relationship with God.
And he's a politician. Did you see how we're supposed to be asking him questions? He's asking you one. You see that? Switch up.
Yeah.
I call. So let's get right into the question. Why did you join the Republican Party? And you said because of your conservative values. How long you been with the Republican Party?
Oh, I've been in the Republican Party since 2002, 2003, when I started to vote.
Because I was on the Republican Central Committee executive board for 4 years, and to be honest, I didn't know about you until I met you at Timbers. What's that restaurant?
What was it?
Timbers or?
Yeah, I think it was Timbers.
Yeah, I didn't know who you were until I met you that day, and that was a couple months ago.
Politics was something that was on TV, something that we discussed.
Have you been part of the state party and the Central Committee?
No.
Okay.
No.
Why did you pick Assembly versus the other seats?
It's what I know in regards to my district. It's my home. It's my community, my neighborhood. I didn't want to run for Washington. Look at the circus that's going on in Washington, D.C. That doesn't have the trust of the people. Right. I love my neighbors. I want to stay here. I don't want to go somewhere else. I don't want to be. I don't need the job or the paycheck. I want to do something good. I have more to give.
I watched an interview with you, and you were with another doctor. I forget his name. His name escapes me. And what I was watching was you were talking about changing the laws for chiropractic, which is something that you're involved in. But I didn't hear anything about changing the laws about anything else. You want to explain?
Oh, absolutely. It's not so much the changing the laws. What I would propose is one of the things I had said was, and
changing the law for chiropractics benefit you.
No.
Or your colleagues.
I think you took a word out of it and out of the whole context of what was said.
Okay.
We need to give people, one of my things is to give the people back the money for what they're doing for their health. Okay. So I know people that go to yoga studios, martial arts studios, they go to the gym, they have supplementation, they get preventative diagnostics, they get preventative treatment. So we're not treating a disease, we're preventing one. I suggest rewarding that somehow. That needs to be rewarded. You stay off the healthcare system as opposed to rewarding people for the bad stuff.
So let me rephrase. So, what bills would you introduce to the Assembly to help your constituents in AD 21? What bills would you introduce?
I think the one of the ones that's for me the most is not necessarily I would probably introduce the lottery that I mentioned the other night when we did the thing. I'd like to see that lottery money. You have to be a nonprofit in Nevada.
Explain the lottery so people could know.
Article 4, Section 24 talks about the lottery. And it says that the lottery is forbidden in Nevada unless it's a nonprofit basis. Mm-hmm. When you start looking at the homeless and the unhoused, because they're two different bodies of people, and you start looking at the mentally challenged or the people with some struggles, cognitive disabilities, when you start to break that down, you start to realize that if we had a nonprofit, we could service that that community from the lottery money. It doesn't always have to come from the general fund. There are things that we can do. We just let people drive down the state line. They buy their lottery tickets there. We obviously don't have a problem living with gambling in our city. Why not make the lottery available for them?
So you're talking about like Powerball and
all
so
of
you
that.
want to
Yes.
people try to introduce that before and failed.
All the time.
And the casinos are going to say F you.
Absolutely.
This is to like house homeless you're talking about, like using lottery money to house homeless or help them?
It's an option for us to do that because again, everybody in the community has an opportunity. It's a nonprofit. It has to be a nonprofit by Article 4. What I propose in regards to the mental health aspect, if you look at the strain that we have in our hospitals, 33% of our beds are actually taken up with people with mental issues as opposed to you having an injury and being able to be seen right away. Okay. We need that. There's a very specific thing, especially coming out of COVID. I mean, now that we've gotten away from our energy and all of these things.
That there's no more COVID. It's gone. Well, I listened to him yesterday. Hey, so COVID is off the table. Not what you got.
The truth is, I'm not even.
My whole platform was COVID. That's off the table. Biden said no COVID. What do you got now?
It's the treatment. It's the treatment. For the people who have had it, the people who have had the vaccines, where do they go? They're shedding. There are things that are happening. But the point is, getting back to it. The Article 424 with the lottery is a way we could help the unhoused and the homeless. Steve, there's a big difference between the two. What people don't know is that homeless is those people who live in their liberties. They're the people that are living underneath their creator, saying, I can live the way I want. I don't got to participate in society. Leave me alone. If I want to hold a sign, if I want to live under a bridge, it's my business. The homeless that I'm talking about is really called the unhoused. Those are the people that have a family. They're either financially unhoused, they have to live in a park, they're living in a car, they're trying to make ends meet.
Still talking about the lottery.
Still talking about the lottery.
But how are you going to convince the casinos to go along with this? Because casinos are saying hell no with the lottery. Because I've been to the legislature and it was introduced several sessions, and everybody is saying, the casinos are saying, hell no, no way, don't want it. And the politicians are going to follow the casino because the politicians want to get the campaign donations. So how are you going to convince the casinos?
Don't know. You specifically asked me what I was going to, one of the things I would propose. Yeah, but if I'm trying to fix things and I'm looking at how I'm going to fix a population of people that we have to do something.
Can't we fix that with the weed money?
Well, it should have been.
Which has been not appropriated for what it's supposed to have been used.
It wasn't earmarked properly. We all know that. Yeah. But the truth is that there are things we can do. Prime example, if you made $40 an hour and you're in Manhattan, New York, and you make $40 an hour in Manhattan, California, and you work 40 hours, you cannot afford basic housing.
Okay, so you're talking about AD 21. Okay, how long you been there?
I've been there in that district for 8 years.
Okay. So what are the issues? First, tell us the boundary of AD 21.
They moved it with the redistricting, so it's kind of like Valle Verde. In a nutshell, Valle Verde being your eastern border, Sunset being your northern border, Bermuda being your western border, and Silverado Ranch, and clear up into Horizon Ridge area as your kind of your southern border.
Okay, so you're reporting to AD 21, the constituents AD 21. These people are going to be the ones that's going to go out to the voting booth to vote for you. How is that lottery going to help them with homeless? There's no homeless in AD 21.
There most certainly is. It's not a big area. There's not a huge area of homeless. We have actually some bridges by Eastern. There's actually underneath, there's some tunnels underneath there that there's some homeless.
One or two?
No, there's some big water runoff things area that they're in there. So we have them just about every corner.
And what population would you say the homeless? What is the population for AD 21? First of all,
I don't have a number of how many homeless.
And if you was to equate that to the amount of people living in AD 21, what would be the population of these homeless people? Because to be honest with you, I've been through AD 21, and you're the first person that mentioned to me about homeless. Now we're talking about Washington and 4th Street and 5th Street. Oh, if we're talking about we open up this door right now, there's some homeless walking around here. But AD 21, I don't see any homeless. And the lottery thing, usually, because I interview candidates all the time, especially assembly candidates. One assembly candidate thought that we go to Washington, on the state building here was where we conduct sessions. He was so off. But usually when I talk to assembly candidates about their district, I want to know what's going to serve the mass amount of people there. And having a lottery that been kicked out of session so many times because the casinos won't do it, to satisfy a percentage of homelessness, which is a small amount in 80-20, how would that justify?
So let me rephrase it this way.
Okay.
It's one of the bills I produced. I have others that I want to chat about. Okay. But I want to address it in regards to when you talk about cost. Okay. Even though 80-21, remember, even though I'm voting on this as a state legislature, even though I represent a portion of that state. Right. So homeless and
you
the
got to
unhoused.
convince 41 other assembly people to vote.
Absolutely. Again,
and
it's
a lot of them won't.
I understand. But I'm going to keep bringing up smart things until people smarten up. So that's, unfortunately, I get it, but you mean we have to do something.
Is a smart thing.
I think the homeless, and it's a way that we could take this where I'm not having to not be doing something foolish enough by imposing another stupid tax. Okay. So what can we do to get people to voluntarily help their neighbors? Okay. But let me get back on it when you said that what does it affect? If you get a splinter in your toe, you pay a doctor $100, you get that splinter taken out. Where does that unhoused or that homeless person go?
She's asking you a question again, this guy.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Nowhere, yeah.
It doesn't go anywhere. When he waits until it's infected, then it gets gangrenous, and then he's got to go and he's got to get it cut off. To the tune that for every unhoused or homeless person, we pay $37,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at it as, so it's not just about addressing it from the perspective of just the homeless. What other stress and strain does that put on our society?
Financial burden.
The financial burden.
It's actually interesting. I hate to bring this up. I mean, we were talking about a topic that you and I are very interested about, which is the family law courts. And somebody was actually telling me some statistics about how the family law courts make about 60 to $70 billion, but it costs the taxpayer $500 billion if you really calculate the damage done by family court.
Right, and amongst others. So the point that I'm making is that that would be a proposal that I'd push. If I could make an amendment, I mentioned this the other night. One of the big reasons for me entering the race was Joint Resolution 8. When I saw that was on the ballot, I said this cannot be. Joint Resolution 8 is where they're trying to change Article 1, Section 24 of the Constitution that reads equality about race, color, creed, and now they've added words like sexual orientation, expression, and identification. These simply benign words seem like that's just it. Okay, I don't want to take anyone's right. But what you're not realizing is, why are they doing it? They're following the same plan that they did in California. They want to add minor attracted persons and these other terms because they're coming for the children, and that's what's happening.
Isn't civil rights bills like already sufficient enough to ensure equality?
Well, the word equality itself has come from the Greek word logos, which means to think and to speak. So anybody that can think and speak is given that equality, 100%. But why would you want to change it? If you know you're getting equality and it makes sense, why would you add sexual orientation and expression, which are vague terms? And you think that it doesn't have an impact. The truth is that we'll talk about the police. Crimes against a man versus crimes against a woman. One's a felony, one's a misdemeanor. If I sock you, you hit me, it's a big difference if you're a female. So if the police roll up on a crime scene and there's a man that was once a woman and a woman was once a man, and there's altercation, what happens?
We're talking about the transgender.
Yeah, whatever. But I'm just pointing out that when you start to muddy the waters, you're already constitutionally in an issue, because the police aren't involved in every constitutional issue like I believe they should have more training on it. And now you're walking up going, wait a second, I'm sorry, it's Stevana now, and it's not instead of Steve, and who hit who. So it does muddy the waters. So these issues aren't easy.
Something earlier, like were you trying to insinuate that some of these bills are to basically legalize pedophilia? Was that what you were trying to get at? Or
yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. And what I'm trying to tell you is that if you follow the plan that they're doing in California, where they started putting these same benign words, minor attracted persons, sexual orientation, expression, identification, this is what's next. And this is what they're pushing for. Why would you put them in there?
So we got the lottery to help the homeless. Mm-hmm. What else do you have that you want to propose to the legislature?
I'd like to see harsher punishments for cheating in the voting. I think that we don't have a hotline. We don't have what they did with the poll watchers. That needs to be addressed. Okay. I'd like to work with you. Mentioned that the retain and remove. having judges run unopposed, having the judicial system to run rampant and not anybody taking a look at it. We talked about jurisdiction. There's a lot of little things that need cleaned up. So a lot of these things, when I'm sitting with other assemblymen, I think that there's a lot. Andy Matthews, or women, of course, but I've sat with Andy Matthews is what I was going to bring up. Andy Matthews had some good stuff on voter integrity, some voter ID.
Isn't he running for controller or something?
Yeah, he's running.
So how come you're not running for Secretary of State?
I haven't earned it. I'm going to start small and earn my way up, and at least do a good job this. Yeah, but he did it. I don't have his money or his time, so the point is that.
And NBC TV show, right, I'm sure helped a lot. Yeah.
So no, I don't have that. So there's a lot of things that come up. You mentioned that yesterday, which your bill actually is Article 6. 4 through 9, sections 4 through 9.
Assemblywoman Dr. Robin Titus has that bill that she's pushing.
It's a good bill. I mean, especially when I got to read it, it was like, why would you have a judge run unopposed and not allow the people to have a say? Did he do a good job, or she do a good job?
Yeah. What else you got?
What else you want to know?
I want to know what you're going to bring. All right. Let me rephrase. You've been knocking on doors, right? Okay. What are the issues facing 8021? I'm sure when you knock on the door, and because I know Vem does it, and he goes, hey, what issues do you have that I can help you with? What are the issues that's facing 8021 when you've been knocking on doors?
Especially for some of the businesses that I'm visiting is economy. Everybody's concerned about the economy. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing inflation. I'm hearing about the same economy. People are nervous. Okay. They're scared. They don't trust the government. They've lost control of the government. They don't have that feel that the government's going to tell them the truth. When I talk to them about gas, people say, oh my God, gas is getting out of control. What's going to happen? So I hear there's a lot of fear out there is what I'm getting. Most of the issues that are going to be affecting 8021 are the issues I'm hearing, unfortunately, are polarized by the federal. I don't know about you, but everybody's, what's about Ukraine now? Okay. I can't do anything in 8021 about Ukraine, but unfortunately, the narrative now is the bigger issues. So a lot of times when you go up to somebody, you start talking to them about local issues, neighborhood watch programs. If they're going to defund the police, then we need neighborhood watch programs, something you can be a neighborhood watch person. So you have to establish a community feel. So for me, being out there, listening to them, they're concerned about education. They're concerned about critical race theory. They're concerned about not having their rights. They're concerned about the vaccine mandates. They're concerned about, at some particular point, what if we get shut down again? They're worrying about if we're going to end up in a war, none of which really is too much impacted by my, unfortunately, by my, being honest. Yeah. I mean, I have to go and say it's above my pay grade. It's above my pay grade. But there are things that we can do, like I mentioned on Monday, working with mental health and improving so that we don't lose more people to suicide than we do in combat.
And how would you address those two issues, the mental health issue and the suicide issue?
Well, I'm not going to say use that lottery money to build mental health facilities, but I'm saying that I do suggest that we do something to create mental health facilities. I'd like to see that. And one of the big things that it was a transition when it come out of the service. You mentioned that something I heard you say that the Air Force has a program, but the other branches do not.
No.
We need to have a transition that I think being able.
But that's still above your pay grade.
Still above my. I was just going to say, but what isn't is about what I can do and what we're doing in our offices when you guys do your IMEs, your independent medical examinations. If you don't know, when a veteran has to fill out what their disability is, they have to fill it in these little boxes. I mean, that's just going to make you insane just trying to fill out. For a back pain, it's 35 pages. And you need history. It's terrible. I mean, they make it so to the point that if you have a disability, you don't want to fill it out. So it's like improving the process of getting veterans their disability ratings.
Are you part of that veteran program, the outreach program that the VA have? Are you part of it? Does the VA send you veterans? Are you part of that program?
I'm not actually, okay. And it just came new. Well, it just actually came out where they started allowing chiropractic in now. Just so you know, the VA just came out with a program where I actually can have an impact.
Okay.
Before
Did you sign up?
Yeah, that's part of the program. You actually have to submit. You're not just sign. The government. It's not like I'm in. No, they have to tell you you're in. Or you're not in. So we're something we want to do. I mean, you kind of feel like you want to. I see enough veterans now. I mean, we just turn everybody on. We have special services in our office and necessary for veterans and things like that. So Coming from a military background and a family, from my family, you have appreciation for it. So
you know the average income of constituents in 8021?
Yeah.
What is it?
About 44,000.
Okay, that's about right. You know, in politics, they say don't ask a question unless you already know the answer. So everything I ask you, I already know the answer to it. I just want to see if you know the answer to it. And I knew about there's no homeless issue out there. Maybe 3 or 4 guys hanging out of a bridge.
Down on Eastern, I said, no, there actually is. I want you to go back. I want you to look right on Eastern and Pebble. There's this little park, and there's a waterway that comes out of there, and people go up this. They live underneath this tunnel or something. I didn't know it was there until I was shown.
Who's not even going to vote?
They're not going to vote. The point being is that, as I said, is what homeless and the unhoused do is, one, what kind of country are we that we can't fix this problem? There's ways to do it through the churches, and I have proposals for that to fix the homeless and the unhoused. That's not my only focus. The children, the crime. I look at our streets; they're filthy. Who's accountable for that?
You're in Henderson. Why don't you call the mayor up?
Well, let me say, drive on the highway. You see a ladder, a desk, a dolly on the side of the highway. It's terrible.
Yeah, it happens in the southwest, in the northwest too.
Anywhere. The whole entire point is it shouldn't. It's disgusting. It's dirty. We should live in a clean city. Crime's out of control. 14 shootings last weekend. 14 shootings, 1 rape. 2 deaths, 1 in a hookah lounge. You see all this? I mean, you just see the crime going up, and it's...
I think he wants to run for sheriff.
No, I think that we talked about that the other night, too, about judges and what's happening. People, you mentioned about, with the last gentleman, you mentioned sentences. When do you give someone a second chance? And then when do you give the maximum versus the minimum sentencing? Right. And I appreciated that. It was a good conversation. I thought that.
I heard in the interview you had with Steve Wilson about essentially some people that are hard criminals are getting released on these ankle bracelets. Do you think that's part of the issue, that we're not being as tough on crime as we should be?
The gentleman that was before me, we were talking, and I was listening to it, and he talked about Sharia law, and you go to these other countries. Some of the people that I know, when they go there, the crime is very different. You don't, when you go to Turkey, you steal something, they cut your hand off. Now, I'm not suggesting that's good, but I will tell you, not a lot of people steal there. Right?
It's a discouraging.
So, and again, I'm not suggesting that. But
no thieves in Turkey.
What I am saying is that when you have when there's a deterrent, when you realize that there's no deterrent, people aren't going to care. So you have to have some sort of a deterrent, right? So, I think that when we have our police doing a fine job arresting people, and then they're being let out to only to commit the same crime, maybe even more outrageous, that's a problem. So, as far as as far as the thing in regards to as far as the punishments, if you know that you're going to get let out and you know that there's no real recourse for it, what's your deterrent from it?
Yeah. It seems almost there, and tell me if you agree here, there's like an invasion of California politics into Nevada, which the complication here is still Assembly is going to be majority Democrats. Would that be correct?
If we have the opportunity now,
if they challenge all the seats that are unchallenged, then we have a chance. But if they don't, these are gonna.
How do you deal with that? You go in there and you're outnumbered.
We can't even field a whole team. We have 20 seats that don't have Republicans that are running in the seats. So when you mentioned earlier, what's the problem? The judge was talking about what's the problem that led to that? Why aren't we having good people? What is wrong with our messaging?
Because everybody jumps into one area and leave everything open.
Right.
Kind of like bad combat.
Mm-hmm. A lot of crossfire, right?
That's what's going on with Russia right now. They're getting their butt beat by Ukraine. So, Vem.
Yes, sir.
You have any questions?
If you could sum it up, what are the top 5 issues right now that as a unified assembly we need to work on to make sure Nevada does not go to hell?
Economy, healthcare, education, probably not necessarily in this order, voter integrity.
When you say voter integrity, are you talking about cleaning voter rolls? How do we fix that?
voter IDs, get rid of the mail-in ballots. They just passed all these laws now that really we have no signature verification, so the chain of custody has now been violated. My God, you walk into a casino, they know who you are before you get out of the cab or the Uber by facial recognition. We should have maybe streaming our polling places to see if there's anything that does happen. There's no punishment. You should be 6 months in jail if you're caught cheating. There's no punishment for you. You talk about punitive again in your previous question. There's no punishment for people that commit crimes now, and that's tough. Especially you see that at our elections, anybody can go in and do whatever they want. I didn't find that in the particular precinct that I was in when I voted, but because there were people there that were standing around. There was a lot of people there, and I think we need more of that. But voter ID, free voter ID makes no sense. You'd have a vaccine card, but you wouldn't have someone bring a voter ID. Why? It doesn't make any. Again, there's something to miss here, right? You want me to carry a card, but you don't want me to carry a card, and they're both free. I mean, what's the point? What am I missing? Mm-hmm. So in regards to that would be a big one. I also think that, again, I mentioned the educational piece that has a lot to do with the fact that we rank so low. And I think that we should be talking about that. That's a very serious thing. We have the least amount of people that are ready for these bigger jobs out there. We're not graduating these scholars that we could be like other states.
Question about that, because I was thinking about that all day today. It's something that I would hear over and over again. How do you fix our horrible place in education today?
One, I love that. That's a good question, and here's why I love it, because it goes back to the fundamental principle that you have to, what is working somewhere else, and can we grab that and put it here? Like I was in Florida listening to some of the people down in Florida, and I'm thinking, well, what are you doing down there that's working? What could we do here? What could we take? And if you broke up our school board,
do they have a highly rated education system?
They do. They're in the top 15. Okay, so it's probably not the highest. I think it's Connecticut. It's probably the highest in regards to educational. But when you start looking at what's working in other places and start being able to adopt some of those policies and programs, our school district is so big. They've already voted to actually separate it, but hasn't happened.
You got any kids in the school district?
I do. I got one daughter, 16.
Oh, okay.
So I pray a lot.
Well, yeah.
No, it's true. No, it really is.
Take her to the gun range?
I do. She shoots. I got a 300 blackout. She loves it. She actually asked if you're going shooting this weekend. Dad, we're going to go shoot. Nice. She's good. But it's all these reasons why it's important. So again, getting back to your very first question, why am I running, is I no longer can just sit back and I have something more to give. Right? It is. I actually ran in 2004, 2005, last minute kind of thing we did. We just said something. We're trying to get some, I wanted to think, I actually was naive enough to think I was going to make a solo change at that time. Maybe I wasn't humbled enough at that time to be. I believe there are two types of people on the planet, the humbled and the soon to be. And I since then have had enough humbling experiences and enough gray hair now to realize I'm glad I'm running at this stage of my life. I'm a very different man now than I was then. And I appreciate all those battle scars that I've gotten over the years now. Much more mature. I'm not quite as impetuous. Much more calculated thinking. I'm a stronger person internally. As far as those things. But
I have another question, because I know you work with a lot of celebrity athletes, and I work in Hollywood, and one of the things that I never understood is a lot of these individuals are going through similar concerns and have similar problems as to the top 5 issues you talked about, whether it's their children going into bad schools or, same sort of thing. They're concerned about voter fraud. They're concerned about constitutional rights. They're concerned about these bad laws and how that affects their daughter because, now you got potential, sexual deviants now having certain rights, Why do you think it is that they don't speak out more?
I certainly can't speak for any of them in particular, but I will say that they speak out in their groups. I'm sure that they donate, and I'm around enough of them that they do feel the same way. They're trained. Most celebrities and pro athletes are trained to keep their opinions to themselves because anything that they can get kicked out of the league. Look what happened to Aaron Rodgers, Joe Rogan. So you have to realize if you're in to be in it, then be in it. And if you're not going to want to be in it, then you need to stay out of it. So you'll see a lot of them, they do feel the same way that we do. A lot of their issues are a little different. They come from a different financial understanding or backing. But remember, if you were to look at the statistics in the NFL, particularly, how many of them are broke after a certain period of time, right? So you have to look at it as that the amount of hits that they take, the amount of all the things that are going on. So they have that, but at the same time, they have to focus in on their own careers. So they do have their parties. There's plenty of athletes that I know that, hey, Dr. Petrick will really appreciate that. Thank you, for being out there. Thank you for doing that. Or, hey, I got a big issue. Can I talk to you about something? Healthcare is a big issue for my celebrities and my athletes. It's the one thing that they all have in common is their health. And if you can't play on Sunday, bye-bye big paycheck. So healthcare comes really, really important. And a lot of them now are seeing what's happened, and they look with chronic traumatic encephalopathy in their brain and stuff, and they realize that, hey, I have a longevity with my family. And if I don't do this right, and if I don't do this, I may not make Junior Seau, in the prime example. Some of these guys are taking their lives because their lives are ruined based upon. So healthcare plays a big role. The economy plays a big role because at some particular point they're preyed upon. These guys are taxed so heavily, you have no idea. And if you don't come from a background of understanding the complex tax laws and strategy, you're at the mercy of an accountant or a legal team that at the end, they're the ones with the money. And a lot of these athletes are left, back, dependent upon their group of friends, their core people. So I really don't have an answer as far as why they don't do it, but I will tell you that enough of them feel the same way that we do. And it doesn't matter, again, what team they play for. It doesn't matter their political stance. I think that they're very appreciative of being where they want to be. There's big money in sports, and a lot of times it's the owners too. You got the owners telling the players, you say something, you're off the team, and at some point they're just a commodity, and they're just be sold or traded, and it doesn't really matter. And honestly, I like to see politics out of sports. Personally,
You don't like it when they talk out?
I don't. They have a right to, like certainly. I don't. I just think that when you make it about yourself, and having played so many team sports, some of the greatest coaches, the ones who said, "Don't be an individual out there." And I think that, but I see that he had a right to kneel. I mean, it's his right, freedom of speech. I mean, you can't have it all both ways. So you can't say that's wrong, but that's right. And did I think that it was?
I think it's
right?
disrespectful.
I think it's disrespectful too. But it's like he's got that right. So it's like, where do you?
And the coach got a right to fire him.
Absolutely. Well, the owner does. See, the coach should bench his butt, but the team should have fired him. They didn't make a stand. But I appreciate that too. And I wasn't in favor of it. And for a while was turned off in the NFL.
It's like somebody told me that because you went to war, and protect our Constitution, I have a right to burn this flag. And I said, you do. I said, and then I have a right to kick your fucking ass once you burn the flag.
Burn my flag, I stomp your ass. I saw that.
There you go.
I saw
For every action, there's a reaction, right?
I saw that thing. I was like, that's good. I guess it's good.
Every action is a reaction. With that said, Dr. Petrick, what committee would you, if you had to pick one, what committee would you want to sit on as an assembly person, and why?
That's a really good question.
I know a lot of the committees. Go ahead.
And to be straightforward, I don't. A lot of times when I'm talking about committees, it's kind of like winning a race first and then finding out what committee I could ultimately serve on. Finance, if I like the judicial, whatever committees are available for me. I don't really have a particular committee. Have you been to Carson City? Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you've been to our state legislature?
Yeah. Okay. I actually have a really cool picture of sitting on that assembly sign that's in front of there. But I really don't necessarily have a particular committee that I'm bound to. Like I really haven't said, I want to be on this committee. I haven't. Steve, it starts with winning my race. It starts with winning the race first. I'm educating myself on the Constitution. I'm learning the case law. I'm learning the things that are surrounding my district. Like I said, with economy being one of the biggest issues I'm running to in Assembly District 21, or being the focus of the people. I haven't really put myself into it that way. I didn't look at it as I need to be on this. Or what about you? Did you? I'm asking as an assemblyman. Did you think about committees?
I guess my place would be judiciary.
Dr. Petrick, hold on. You're not supposed to ask questions.
Well, it's just I appreciate a fellow assemblyman in that regard, because it's something that we don't put a lot of emphasis on. I mean, how often? It's a great question. I like to be these types of questions because it does make me think. I will promise you this. I like that because I didn't put a lot of thought in it, and I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. You are a commentator. I was asking, did you? What is your? Judicial, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely having influence on the judiciary, I think, is an important place. Yeah.
So, Mr. Miller, do you have any other questions?
Just one more question about small business, because I know that's a big topic right now. I mean, I think something like 500,000 small businesses have gone out of business. I think by the time, even though Joe Biden forgot about COVID yesterday, but I think the time that,
So funny.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's done.
Woof, like just like that. Now we can unmask.
He got the pulse. He knows they're about to get an ass whooping. But so 500,000 businesses have gone out of business because of these COVID mandates. By the time I think the trickle-down effect happens, I know so many businesses that are on there. I mean, unless you got like big money suddenly coming in and helping people out, there's probably going to be millions by the time this carnage is done. How do we bring small business back, which obviously helps the middle class?
So addressing that from your previous question too, as far as what we're meeting at the door and what our message is in regards to state versus federal. Our message is go local. Mm-hmm. Get away from the big box companies. Bank local. Your local banks don't invest in ESG accounts. Your local banks give more to your local communities. Shop local. You want to eat organic? Go to your farmer's market. You don't know where your grocery store. They just tell you it's organic. Go to your farmer's market. Support your local farmers and ranchers. Love local. Find out your local charities. Business, support local business. If you, what I do in my thing is in my district, I'm really trying hard to get people to start utilizing the businesses in my district. Mm-hmm. Do you know Mary down here at the dry cleaner? Do you know this person? You start talking and you start creating a business awareness. There's plenty of people in our own district. If we just started utilizing the restaurants and the services in our area, we could keep them open. It's our responsibility to keep them open. I mean, go start visiting them. Sunrise Cafe in my district, Prosecco, these Italian restaurants there. I'm encouraging people from other districts come in. Have you heard about these? So small business, not just being restaurants, but other things. You have to be as a politician or a servant of the people, encouraging business. Mm-hmm. You start bringing as a business leader into the banking. Mm-hmm. You start bringing in the being able to help people deal with the tax problems, people now deal with the lack of income that they've had for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. So all of these things play a role. So as a small business person in my community, you need to know I'm pro-business. That's the big thing. My entire campaigns go local, but you have to push it out there. You just can't hope that people visit the local businesses. Yeah. So for me, get other legislators out there that are people running and saying, how do we, during my campaign and over these few months, I probably are going to have 12 different events in these restaurants. Mm-hmm. Encourage people to come out, try the food, try it. Like our Latino event on April 29th or 29th, April 29th. We're going to have all kinds of local
Latinos are allowed to come to this?
No, it's just an event. I appreciate the community a lot.
The event can't come.
Anybody can come. This is just an event, kind of. You know what? You ever heard of Ron Fleetus? These are the guys with the old cars, beautiful cars, man. If you like old Ford, just gorgeous cars. Ron Fleetus and Lou. I did a food Christmas thing with them. We gave away a bunch of toys, and they came out, and I had them come out, and I have other events that we're doing. One for the Asian community in our district too, and just really encouraging businesses. And I have some accounting firms that are Latino. I have some other businesses, like some attorneys. We really want to kind of do almost like a job fair, and really start to push pro-business. And what can we do as legislators? Well, did you know that Joaquin has an accounting firm, and he's Latino? And a lot of times Latinos they're so kind of regarded as like they wouldn't know. And now you can push this awesome business profiles, and there's really good people around. So you try to have business for everybody, events for everybody, but this one happens to be a Latino event we're going to pull off.
Yeah. Well,
is that a good answer?
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, that's.
Do you have anything else?
I mean, this is more of a statement. Just because he works with a lot of celebrity athletes from the UFC, and it's like small businesses can't afford these guys. And what would be awesome? I mean, one little tweet about Tito's taco stand, and then all of a sudden Tito, who's about to run out of business, is like back to normal. And this is more of a wish. I wish, guys like those UFC athletes would do little things like that to really help our comeback. Just a little tweet, just a little Instagram picture of, hey, I had a taco at Tito's stand. And if literally every athlete in the UFC, Every athlete in the UFC or baseball players did that sort of thing, I think we would see miracles.
It certainly does help. Advertising, advertising is good. I'll tell you someone who does a lot of that. That's Forrest Griffin. Mm-hmm. We talked about that earlier. Forrest Griffin is out there in the community. He'll pretty much show up anywhere for a small business. He's a good man. Most of the athletes really are down-to-earth people. They're so around so many people that they really do want to do that. And a lot of times it just gets, the negative attracts so much more that when they do something like that, no one cares.
Keepers, managers, agents that are like, what do you mean you're going to tweet to a Tito's? We got to charge Tito $100,000 for that tweet. But I don't think today's the day for that. Is I guess
Yeah, Forrest Griffin used to judge the Real MMA when we used to have him down at Boulder Station.
You get to meet him, and then you knew
Brent Jones. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a former police officer. Good, solid guy. There are those athletes that you really do grow attached to, and I've known Forrest a long time since he was originally on the cast on the show, and I've just stayed in contact with him over the years, and I just appreciate he's one of the many that I've worked with, and I've just had such a great. I worked with Brock and all those guys, and there's a lot. Everybody's got a little bit of a different stage presence than that's it. So
we're running out of time.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Dr. Jon Petrick, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the program. Vem Miller, thank you so much for being co-host.
Thank you.
I want you to take a look in the camera and tell folks why they should go to the voting booth and vote for you and your point of contact.
Well, my name is Dr. Jon Petrick. I'm a candidate for Assembly District 21. As a physician, I'm a patient advocate for people that are in pain. For the last 22 years, I've had an opportunity to serve many hundreds, if not thousands of people from the Las Vegas community and area. It's a privilege to have been able to serve them as a physician. I'm looking forward to that privilege to serve them as a legislator. My record speaks for itself as a healer. I took an oath 22 years ago to love every single person in front of me, and I'll do the same thing when I'm serving you as your legislature in Carson City. You could find me call me on my phone. I have a public line at 702-300-8008, or you can reach me on my website. You can check that out at drjon4nevada.com. That's Dr. Jon for Nevada.com. I can't do this alone, so I'd really love to hear from you. Ideas, opportunity, where I'm speaking, where we're going. If you want to join in, not just about my race, but any candidate out there, if you really are struggling to find out what the heck is going on in the world, do something about it, become a poll worker. If you don't know a candidate, learn one, learn who they are, learn what they're fighting for, learn what they're all about, but make sure this is our race. We are the people, so don't make this about me, make it about we. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, that's Dr. Jon Petrick. He's a candidate for Nevada Assembly District number 21. This is Steve Sanson and Vem Miller with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.